The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. Feisty, fearless, and fair. She's an Emmy-winning journalist from the White House to war zones, telling all sides of the story. This is The Rita Cosby Show.
And tonight on The Rita Cosby Show, well, it's official. Lindsey Graham's sister, Darlene, who he took care of when she was just a teenager and their parents died, she has been the placeholder in his South Carolina seat. And now, just a few moments ago, she said she is going to run for the full Senate term. That is a biggie. Darlene Graham, the sister of Lindsey Graham, the late Lindsey Graham, my friend, the late Lindsey Graham, who is such an incredible human being. And here she is just a few moments ago making the news. She was on Fox with Sean Hannity.
The president again saying, I hope Darlene does this. Meaning, I hope you will get, and here's the filing deadline for people that don't know, and these are just the laws of South Carolina. The filing begins tomorrow. I think you have a week.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And by that time, the funerals won't even have taken place.
I know.
And then the president's putting an ask on you, we'll put it that way. It's a lot of pressure.
It is a tremendous amount of pressure.
Tell me what's going through your head about it, and where do you stand now?
I'll continue to say I've been praying a lot, talking to my family, but with the love of my family, with the support of his staff. I know I'm a hard worker. I learned that from Lindsey. He cared about the people of this state. I've worked for almost 30 years for the people of this state.
I want to talk about that in a minute.
I feel like I can do it. I feel an inner peace about it. Will it be difficult? Yes, absolutely.
So you're inclined to get in, or have you even made a final decision?
I've made a decision.
You're in.
I'm in.
She is in. So what do you make of Darlene Graham now saying she is in? And I watched her. Boy, she is poised. I can't imagine anybody going through the scenario that she went through, finding out that her big brother, who she describes was not just a brother, but really became her father and her mother, taking care of her on so many levels when they lost their parents when she was just 13 years old. And now to find out his sudden passing, then suddenly she gets thrust into the seat as a placeholder, not a political person by any means, and now thrust into the biggest decision, saying, I am going to do this in honor of my brother, that this is what my brother would want. What a powerful, powerful statement. 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-9222. And you are listening to The Rita Cosby Show. And I'll just say, I love Lindsey Graham. I knew Lindsey Graham. I'm also a Gamecock. I went to the University of South Carolina, as did my friend Lindsey Graham. And I'm sure he is smiling from above, knowing that his sister says, I am in. And that is a big statement. The question happens, what happens with the field? Because there are still a number of other people who came out recently saying that they would run. Ralph Norman among them. Nancy May saying she's not going to run, but there were a few people who said that they would run. And now that they know that she's in the race, will the field get cleared? Will it just be a Darlene Graham to run for the seat on the Republican side? That's the big question tonight. 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-9222. I'll tell you, I was impressed that she was so just level-headed. She also said that she told Lindsey a whole bunch of times, don't always talk about foreign policy. Don't always talk about that. Talk about affordability. Talk about pocketbook issues. Talk about paying the bills. Talk about gas. Talk about those kind of things. She said she would go to the supermarket and she still cuts out coupons. She also likes NASCAR. So she just sounds like a very level-headed, amazing human being. and also someone who clearly loved her brother and said, I need to step up for him now. He always stepped up for me. What a powerful, powerful statement. 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222. And meantime, some big breaking news today. This was really frightening. If you had seen the headlines, you could see the fire because it was still roaring because authorities were right there. This is at 26 Federal Plaza. This is the building in downtown Manhattan where you have ICE, where you have the New York FBI offices, you have an immigration court, you got a whole bunch of that. And today, this guy, who's known to authorities, this guy who has no known major criminal history, but they say he's certainly had some axe to grind in the past, 43 years old. And this individual who was arrested, Andrew Arabaka, a former U.S. Army soldier enlisted for 4 years, 2001 to 2005. He was a mechanic on Patriot missile systems. Well, he clearly went bonkers because he showed up at the Federal Plaza and was loaded for bear. Not only did he have a pellet gun, incendiary devices, gasoline that he was pouring to light that fire on the entranceway, he had axes, he had a hammer, he had a machete, he had 3 knives. Listen to some of the details of what they found out and the motivation for this individual. Here's James Barnacle, FBI Assistant Director in charge of New York.
On his cart, he had a cart. He had anti-ICE literature on it. When he was being arrested, he yelled derogatory terms to ICE, used bad words, obviously. He is an anti-American, anti-government extremist. We know that from what he said. We know that from what he has said post-arrest. And we know that from what his actions that he tried to take today.
Very scary, really scary. He had a grocery cart, essentially, that had a whole bunch of stuff in it, and it had anti-ICE comments just even on that. It has said, ICE off our streets. And then, as you just heard, right after he was arrested, he was also spewing anti-ICE rhetoric. And I'm just going to say it tonight. Clearly, guys like this that have a screw loose are feeling emboldened because so many people out there are bashing ICE, every twist and turn, bashing law enforcement. I think you're inspiring these people that are crazy and loony. Even if your intention is not to get them inspired, they're getting inspired. And they also feel like it's okay to go out and suddenly light an entrance to an ICE building on fire. I mean, that is frightening. And this guy was firing with a pellet gun. He got off about 5 to 7 rounds. And we were saying earlier on Katz and Cosby, John and I were saying, it's lucky that this guy didn't get killed. He's lucky he didn't get killed. He's in custody right now, but he's lucky he didn't get killed. You go to a federal building and you light the entrance on fire. You're loaded for bear with all these things we just talked about. And then you pull out a pellet gun. Authorities don't know what kind of a gun it is, especially, in the height of the moment. Opening fire on the building, firing 5 to 7 rounds. He's lucky he doesn't look like Swiss cheese. 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222. And here's a little bit more from Assistant FBI Director in Charge James Barnacle saying what the guy confessed to after he was taken into custody. He was read his Miranda rights, and then he went on a yapping spree with federal authorities. Listen to it.
His goal was to target the building. He said that and I'm not going to get into all the details of a post-arrest interview, but he was Mirandized, read his rights. He did agree to talk. In that post-arrest interview, he did say he was targeting the building, and he was okay if he hurt or killed people going in and out of the building, whether they were federal employees or civilians.
Whether they were federal employees or civilians. He didn't care if he hurt people, if he killed people. This is really frightening, and things I fear are only going to get worse as we are heading towards the midterm. So much of this is about politics. And so many folks on the Democratic side are out there and they don't care. They're just condemning ICE. They're saying abolish ICE. It's a terrorist group. They shouldn't exist. I mean, this is really frightening. And you're going to get these loony kazoonies like this guy. We don't know. Was he working with a group? We don't know that. It may have just been an individual. But even if it's just an individual inspired, they have normalized attacking law enforcement. Because if you call them a terrorist group enough, people feel emboldened. There was video, I think it was about a week or so ago, and we talked about this on the show here. There was video of these teenagers just beating an officer in South Carolina, a female officer who responded to a scene, and they were just punching and kicking and beating her. It was like they didn't really care. These teenagers just felt like, oh, I can just kind of get away with it. I can do whatever I want to do to a police officer, that it's okay. I mean, I can't even imagine I don't know about you guys, but when I was growing up, I would never have even thought to look badly at a law enforcement officer. My parents would have killed me if I had looked in a bad way towards an officer or disrespected an officer. And yet many teens, many people, many college students, many others feel like it's okay. And I contend a lot of the rhetoric that we've heard has normalized that, and that is darn right scary. Take a listen. Rhetoric like this from New York City's Mayor Zohran Mamdani, who in an interview with the New York Times just a few days ago said this about ICE.
ICE is an agency that has terrorized Americans across this country and others that live in this country. Just the other day, a man wasn't even 30 years old, said goodbye to his wife and his child, and moments later was shot by ICE agents in Maine. And this was not even a month after a man was killed in Texas. And so when we're talking about all of this, I often think about it through a prism of legality, consistency, and humanity, and an understanding that immigration policy doesn't just affect those without status. It affects an entire city. You know, I went to a Dominican barbershop in Harlem, and the owner was telling me that everyone in the barbershop had status. They all had status. And yet most of them were terrified to come to work because they know that for so much of ICE's operations, it has little to do with legality. It has to do with profiling, and it has to do with a vision of creating the largest deportation machine this country has ever seen, and of a notion of this country where so many of us who call it home would have no place in it any longer.
That is a stunning comment. And that's the least of what he said about ICE. And then Mayor Mamdani, who's on a roll, reinvigorated that he plans on arresting Bibi Netanyahu, that he's considering arresting the Prime Minister of Israel. This is nuts. But listen to what he also said to the New York Times.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is perhaps planning to visit New York for the UN General Assembly. You pledged during your campaign and after you won to order his arrest to comply with the International Criminal Court warrant. What will happen if he comes in September?
Look, I believe that Prime Minister Netanyahu belongs in The Hague. He's a war criminal who has been charged by the International Criminal Court. And what you will find is that is an opinion that is held by many purely because of what his actions have wrought over these last many years. I've also said that I will follow the laws that we have here in New York City because I believe that there's an importance in following the law as a leader who presides over our city, and that's something that I plan to do.
Meaning? I'm sorry, I don't understand what that means.
Meaning that whatever the law allows me to do in New York City, that's what we will do, but we won't be writing our own laws to that end.
What does the law allow you to do?
That's an active conversation with our legal department in seeing what the prospects are we have here in our municipality. However, what we've seen at the national level is a desire sometimes to write your own laws, to go outside of the bounds of legality. That's not something we have an interest in.
I mean, normally when people come to a UN General Assembly, they're granted a sort of amnesty because it is the seat of the United Nations. Is that what you're thinking that you'll honor, or you're actively looking to see if you can actually arrest him?
I think we are looking at all of our legal obligations, and one of them is with regards to the United Nations. But the other part of this is we're not talking about a personal assessment of Benjamin Netanyahu. We're talking about the International Criminal Court and the fact that they have a warrant out for this prime minister's arrest. And I think it's important to talk about the weight that has as a charge, and also that as the mayor of New York City, I'll be following the laws of New York City.
Okay.
He's having an active conversation with his legal department. The answer should be, I'm just a mayor of a city. I can't do this. This would be crazy. They have diplomatic immunity, but not Zohran Mamdani. That's not his answer. 1-800-848-9222, and we'll continue when we come back right here on a busy news night, as always, on The Rita Cosby Show.
The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. It's the Rita Cosby Show.
And I love hearing from all of you here on the Rita Cosby Show. 1-800-848-9222. Let's start with Al from Yonkers on line one. Al, your thoughts tonight, especially Darlene Graham. What did you make of that? She says, I'm running for the full term.
You know, she's probably, in this life, there's probably nothing tougher than grief and bereavement. It probably hasn't even hit her yet. But I think when the President of the United States, the distinguished governor of South Carolina, has faith in you to run for a full term in the Senate, that door is opened. It won't come again. And I'm sure that played heavily on her mind. And I think she'd be an excellent candidate.
I was really impressed with her, watching her tonight. And the other thing, Al, too, I thought about how beautiful, like the people of South Carolina know that that she loved her brother so much. She loves the state so much, too, has such a profound, deep connection as well. And one of the things I thought was really beautiful, Al, she said, I feel like this is a moment from God. Obviously, it was so horrible, the loss of her brother, but that God has placed her in this position. And she says, I'm stepping up for him and my brother.
The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. Rita Cosby is on. The Rita Cosby Show presents Back the Blue.
And this Back the Blue segment coming from Wilmington, Ohio, where officers saved an injured woman after a golf cart crashed into a pond. Officers arrived on the scene. They found the injured woman lying in the water with two other people struggling to keep her above the surface of the water. The two officers quickly entered the waist-deep water to provide immediate assistance. Now, understanding the probability of serious injuries to the woman, the officers remained with her to comfort her and keep her as calm as possible while avoiding any unnecessary movement until EMS arrived, as there were a lot of rocks in the pond. All three officers worked with emergency services personnel to safely place the woman onto a backboard, then remove her from the pond, and then get her to an ambulance for medical treatment. She is expected to make a full recovery, thanks to our great men and women in blue. And today, as we talked about, outside of the ICE facility, this is where the immigration court is. This is where the detention is also. This is where you saw those crazy protests with the guy who is running for Congress, the Democrat Brad Lander in New York. He's a former DSA guy. He's been a big anti-ICE guy all the time, through and through. And remember, he did the protests outside the immigration court there. They had to haul him away, and he did this whole big theatrical thing about that. Well, we've seen that image all over the country. And today, NYPD Commissioner Jessica Tisch talked about this guy who showed up, again, pouring liquid gasoline, had fireworks, a whole bunch of other stuff. His name is 43 years old, Andrew Arabaka. His last known address, by the way, was Harlem, but he's from Poughkeepsie, New York, just outside of Manhattan. And as I mentioned, he was an Army veteran and apparently an anti-ICE activist in many ways. And here is what the NYPD commissioner described of what this guy had on him.
Subdue him and take him into federal custody. On the scene was recovered, among other things, 2 airsoft rifles and the container with the flammable liquid. Also affixed to the suspect's cart was a sign reading "ICE off our streets." During the incident, the suspect was wearing a military-style helmet. This incident occurred along federal property, and the NYPD is supporting the federal government in their investigations. Charges are yet to be filed. Our work with the Joint Terrorism Task Force and the Southern District of New York is critical to keeping our city safe, and I commend the federal agents and contractors and officers who responded to the threat.
Yeah, we should all, because the guy had a pellet gun, but what if it was a real gun? That's what's so frightening. And obviously the flames that he created with the gasoline and everything else, that was certainly real. So then Zohran Mamdani, the mayor of New York, puts out a statement. Not only does he bash ICE, but he does put out a statement, though, which at least was a little more appropriate than some of the verbal things. And he says what occurred at 26 Federal Plaza is deeply disturbing. I'm relieved that no one was seriously injured. There were a number of people injured, but minor injuries, thank goodness. And he says, and that a suspect's in custody. My team is in touch with the NYPD, and we will support the federal investigation. Of course you will. Maybe we weren't sure, though, because it's Zohran Mamdani, and it's an anti-ICE protester. So here is Tom Homan reacting to the statement I just read. Of course, Tom Homan, the Borders are, who says, you know what, nice to hear from you now, Zohran Mamdani, but we don't believe you.
Well, first of all, I appreciate the comments from Mamdani and Jeffries, but too little, too late. They spent a year attacking ICE, comparing ICE. So let's abolish ICE because they're fascists. ICE are Nazis. ICE are racist. ICE is a secret police. ICE isn't a real law enforcement agency. Fail to comply with ICE. I see the signs every protest resist. So look, they have educated people that they can resist ICE, and the hateful rhetoric continues, which we've had some tragedies recently because people didn't want to comply with ICE. So this is yet another example today. What happened in front of the federal buildings, another example of attacking ICE. And I'm sure if you ask that person why he did it, he can repeat the talking points I just said that you hear from Democratic members of Congress, the Democratic mayors and governors who simply want ICE to go away.
And you just heard from Tom Homan. By the way, attacks on ICE officers are up 1,300%. 1300. That's an enormous amount. And they're also getting threats to their families. They're getting doxxed. No wonder they're wearing masks, even though Kathy Hochul and others don't want them to wear masks. But they're wearing masks to protect their identity because they're getting threats, and they're getting death threats. What would have happened if an ICE agent had been walking out at that moment when the guy was lighting everything on fire or using his pellet gun? He had knives. He had all these other things. This is really, really frightening. And sadly, Tom Homan fears this may be part of a big trend that may be getting worse and worse, especially as we're leading up to Election Day. And I sadly agree with Tom. I really worry for our law enforcement because all you have to do, whether you're an organized part of a group or whether you got a screw loose, whatever the case is with this guy, still extremely, extremely dangerous. And as I mentioned, I think a lot of this Democratic rhetoric that we've been hearing for the last year or so not only is shocking, but it's also just really troubling. It is so disconcerting, and it's also inspiring these loonies to do something dangerous like this guy today. So take a listen. Here is Ed Markey, congressman from Massachusetts, And it wasn't that long ago that he said this about ICE. Take a listen.
So we're still going to have a big battle over ICE. I believe ICE should be defunded. I don't think that ICE is any longer capable of existing because it is so corrupt at its core. But we still have to have that debate.
Corrupt to its core. And then here is Congresswoman Summer Lee, Democrat. This is what she said about ICE not that long ago.
Just first want to associate myself with all of my colleagues who have acknowledged that you can't reform authoritarianism and that we can't unmask fascism and cruelty and oppression, and that the call now is to abolish this agency.
I mean, that is so dangerous. Fascist, abolished to its core, and then this guy shows up today and in his cart it says get ICE off the streets and had all this weaponry. It's really frightening, really frightening. And you heard from law enforcement immediately, not only just that rhetoric, they found a manifesto on him. And according to law enforcement, right away after he was read his Miranda rights, he was still talking. And he said, it didn't matter if I was killing anybody. And apparently he was swearing and saying some really horrible things about ICE. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out his motivation was going after ICE. He was going at the employee entrance. So it did a little recon work, a little reconnaissance. That's really scary. Really, really scary. And the ratcheting up by Democrats. I don't hear any of them saying, oh, I'm sorry. Maybe I should clamp down on my rhetoric because maybe I'm inspiring dangerous people to get incentivized or to feel like they're condoned in their behavior. I haven't heard that yet. When is that coming? 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-9222. Let's go to Sal in New Jersey. Sal on line 3. Your thoughts tonight, Sal.
Hello, Rita. Rita, the reason why we have people like that guy that wanted to blow up that place, that former Army veteran, is because we had people like Brett. What's her name? The black woman.
Who are you talking about? Which one? Who are you talking about? Where is she? What position is she in, Sal?
She's in Congress. She's the one that said if you don't believe in us, you don't belong here. What, I forgot her name.
Are you thinking about Maxine Waters? Is that
Maxine Waters?
Yeah, and she's also the one who said, tell them they're not welcome. Get in their face. And that was horrible.
Right, exactly. And then you had Chuck Schumer, who was behind that horrible statement that he made. If you don't, that led to the threat against Brett Kavanaugh.
Right. If you'll fill the whirlwinds, Kavanaugh, Gorsuch. Right.
Exactly.
Screaming on the Supreme Court steps too, Sal.
So these Democrats have a lot to fess up to because they caused this environment that's causing all this violence.
Well, and I don't know if they caused it, but they certainly, I think, are fueling the flames. I mean, to me, why do you believe they've caused it?
Well, I wouldn't say they caused it. I take that back. But they definitely stirred up the pot that's motivating people to do these things.
I agree. I think that people are getting incited. And when they see somebody in a political office, in a position like a member of Congress, and they so easily say these things, they think it's acceptable. And it's sort of like if you hear it enough times, it normalizes it. And they don't think anything about, going after law enforcement, whether it's ramming a vehicle or lighting the entrance on fire like this guy did.
And what I'm afraid of, Rita, is that it's going to become acceptable in New York City and across the country. It's going to become something like, oh, anybody can do it, and the law enforcement won't do anything about it. Anybody can do these things, and nobody's going to try to stop them because it's going to become normalized.
Well, and you know what? That's a scary thing. I hope we never get to the point where we normalize violence, but you're right. It's become, sadly, so commonplace. And all I have to say, Sal, is that we got to pray for our law enforcement. I mean, their job is tough enough. And then you have people like this. like these kind of, kooky people out there that are threatening them, that are, looking at them, looking at their families. I mean, it's a tough job. And then to think of now that the threats against agents are up 1,300%. That's an enormous amount. And Tom Homan's prediction, sadly, is as the November midterms are coming, but they're still a few months away, he believes it's going to get worse and worse and worse, because he believes Democrats like Mamdani and these others, but especially those that are running, those in Congress and the Senate that are running, they're using it for political fuel. And they're using it because they think it's going to, inspire the base, gin up the base, get the base all revved up. And the base will want to come out and vote. It's like Trump derangement syndrome and ICE derangement syndrome. And they think they don't really care. Quite frankly, it's shocking to me that none of them have ever apologized for saying, boy, maybe I need to reduce. I need to minimize some of the verbiage because it's so out of control. It's so dangerous. No. You don't hear that. If anything, they're just ratcheting it up and they're making people like Maxine Waters, who you brought up, look like child's play. I mean, some of those things, I remember when she said those things, Sal, it was so shocking. And now it's like, she's like one of hundreds that seem to say it. And that's a sad place to be. And these Democratic Socialist types, especially, boy, are they ratcheting it up. Sal, thank you so much. Always good to talk to you. Let's go to Faye in Rockland County on line 1. Faye, your thoughts tonight here on the Rita Cosby Show.
Okay, I wanted to speak about hatred in general and anti-Semitism in particular.
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you. What I've noticed is selling hatred gets votes. There's nothing that gets everybody excited, and we're all against a common enemy, and especially anti-Semitism, which is a very ancient, addictive drug. It makes people with low self-esteem feel very superior. And it's through the ages, it pops up all the time when people are feeling down or feeling lost or not feeling respected enough or alienated. And what's happening now is the Democrat Party, especially the socialists of the Democrat Party, it's not a byproduct. It's not a sideshow. They're actually using anti-Semitism to stir up hatred in people and give them this common enemy. We're going to fight it. And it's a very strong part of their platform. It's something that they use, abuse, and sell in massive amounts. And just to give you an example, they said about Hitler that if he wouldn't have had the Jews, he'd have to invent them, because he himself was a high school dropout. He never held on a job properly. He was homeless in Vienna. He tried being an artist. He was a failed artist. Now, how did a man like that get elected in a westernized country like Germany that boasted such famous people, accomplished people? And the way he did it is very simple. He had the Jews. He didn't have to invent them. He just stirred up the people with that hatred and brought out their greed, what you're going to get when you get rid of the Jews. He made them feel superior. He made them feel that the future belonged to them. And as a result, when he was all finished, 58 million people, 60 million people were dead. And, I myself was born in a VP camp in Germany.
Oh, wow. Wow. And by the way, Faye, I don't know if you know this, but my father grew up right outside the Warsaw Ghetto. My father's Polish, and my father was a prisoner of war. My father was in a Nazi camp. So what you're saying really is so powerful and resonates just so deeply with me personally. Faye, what you said, I want to go back to what you said at the very beginning, that selling hatred gets votes. And what a sad testament that is. But I think your comment is so powerful and so insightful. And clearly it seems to be getting votes with certain bases, hopefully not with everybody. But it certainly seems to be appealing to certain sectors. And I think sadly, a lot of young people too. I think this sort of bashing of Israel that we're talking about in particular is so dangerous and it's so destructive. And it's not just bad. Obviously, it's horrible what they're saying about Jews. I find it repulsive when I hear these anti-Semitic statements. but I also feel it's anti-American. It's so hateful. It's so disgusting. And the problem is we got to, first of all, we got to tap into our young people, into these colleges. We got to get better education, and we cannot let history repeat itself. You just so eloquently sort of described the background of Hitler, and he was able to galvanize people to do these horrible things to the Jews because he was blaming everything on them. And then he also took their weapons away. Let's not forget that too, saying, okay, they were not armed. He made sure they were not armed, the Jews. And then, stirred up all this horrible hatred and blamed economic problems and other problems on the Jews. My father lived through it, so I know exactly. And my father said, no, this is not going to happen, and stood up for them, which I'm very proud of. But you're right. History cannot repeat itself ever again. Faye, do me a favor. I want to have you stay with me because I think this is such an important topic. I got to go to a hard break to a commercial, but I want you to stick around because I want to continue right after the break here on The Rita Cosby Show.
The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. This is The Rita Cosby Show.
And coming up on The Rita Cosby Show, we'll talk about Iran. We'll continue talking about Mamdani and some of the crazy things he has said in just the last 48 hours. Oh, my goodness. Buckle up, guys. This is crazy that he actually thinks maybe he could get Netanyahu arrested. I'll give you a choice. None, and none. That ain't going to happen. 1-800-848-9222. Let's go back to Faye in Rockland County on line 1. Faye, I just think your message is so important about history not repeating itself.
I picked up on something that you said about young people. I had a teacher who said there is a foreign language that's no longer taught in the schools, and that's history. And especially today, when you have information overload, young people cannot handle long conversations, details. Everything is bite-sized, and everything is instant, and everything is whoever's the purveyor of the information, if they're attractive, if they feel connected to them. And it's very, very, that's very, very scary. I was thinking one of the nice things that used to happen in schools is they used to have debating teams.
Yeah, you know what? I like that idea. You're right, because it forces you to think and share ideas and hear from the other side. Faye, as you were talking, by the way, right there about young people, this sort of smile, I really think that was a lot of Mamdani's appeal. He's a smiling, happy messenger, but then he talks about globalizing the Intifada. So if you listen to the words, they're not so happy. We're going to continue more after the break, guys.
Thanks for listening to The Rita Cosby Show. You can hear The Rita Cosby Show weeknights at 10 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?